people would call in and say, well, I've got this old gun. And that's how Mark named that part of the TV show and the magazine.
Oh, yeah,
column. Was from, Mark worked in the museum when he started here. They go, I've got this old gun, you know, sound like Grandpa Simpson.
Right.
And Mark came up with, said, why don't you hold it closer to the phone so we can see it better?
Shotgun with Charlie.
Riding shotgun refers to the practice of sitting next to the driver in a moving vehicle. The term riding shotgun came around after the time of the stagecoach, when somebody used to sit next to the driver holding a shotgun, in case they ran into bandits. My name is Charlie Cook, and I drive a lot. I like to talk to people while I'm driving, so I interview people in my car while I'm driving. Welcome to Riding Shotgun with Charlie. All right, before we start this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, it is great to see that the numbers on the podcast and the YouTube channel are growing. So if you are watching the show and you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please make sure you do, because that's all good for the YouTube stuff. And if you enjoy the show, please share it with your friends, because that is how we get the stagecoach across America. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. This one is a really cool episode because I have with me Phil Schreier from the NRA Museum, and we are filming this in Fairfax, Virginia at the NRA headquarters, at the HQ. Phil, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for asking me.
As I was saying before we got started, you were one of these people I would see when I would watch the Outdoor Channel and the History Channel, and you'd appear up on all these different shows about the history of guns and firearms, and of course I'm like, that guy's got to have the coolest job in the world.
I do. I forgot my white gloves. You can take a right here.
We can take a right. All right.
Yeah.
So how did you? I always start off with this. How did you become a gun guy? How did you become interested in firearms?
We got a lot of time.
Yeah.
Gun guy, firearms, always had an interest as a little kid.
Yeah.
Grew up in a house of Kennedy Democrats who didn't like guns.
Mm-hmm.
Toy guns were they weren't prohibited, but they weren't encouraged.
Right.
Bill Gwaltney, a ranger with the National Park Service, later with the National Park Service, taught me how to shoot at Boy Scout camp. That was the first time I ever held a gun, a little Mossberg 22.
Nice.
And I fell in love with it. When I was very young, my grandmother told me we were related to General Beauregard of the Confederate Army during the Civil War, and that sparked my interest in Civil War history, and couple that with firearms. The next thing you know, I've got an 1860 Army I sleep with under my pillow.
That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So at a young age, what do you study in college to become a curator of a museum?
Oh boy, well, I guess if you go about it the right way, you get a bachelor's and then a master's in museum sciences.
Okay.
I did not do that.
What are we doing here?
You can go straight. You can go anywhere you want, really. I'll get you back to wherever we're going.
Okay, as long as you know where we're going.
Yeah. I majored in political science and history.
Okay.
I got my first job out of college was, you might beep this out, as a compliance inspector for ATF. I worked in the Baltimore office of ATF. I thought, well, you got, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. I mean, what's not to like?
Yeah, it sounds like a party.
Yeah. Who's bringing the chips? But I was very disillusioned with that.
Yeah.
Very upset with the way they operated as stewards of the public trust. I heard some guys up in the regional office in Philadelphia say, "Well, it doesn't matter whether we're right or wrong. We can bankrupt them just trying this, and putting the guy out of business." And the guy lost his wife, he lost his house, he lost his business,
yeah,
and They just knew that they didn't ever have to get to court. They could bankrupt him before he got there.
That's really interesting, particularly with what's going on in 2023 with all of this stuff with the ATF and them.
Exactly. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, nothing's changed. That's really interesting.
You know, New York AG's doing that to us now. You know? She's trying to bankrupt us by, continuance after continuance, I would think. My opinion, personal opinion, but I mean, certainly that's part of the playbook.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's always interesting that when the government wants to go after people, they have a never-ending source of funds.
Yeah, our funds, our taxpayers' dollars.
Right, and of course the government only has money from us.
Right.
It's crazy. All right, so after a little bit of stint with the ATF, you're like, yeah, this isn't what I thought it was.
Also, I was working at Boy Scout camp where I learned to shoot. Is where I ended up going back as a counselor, and then I ended up running the camp's rifle range. And I was sitting I was working the winter months, working retail in a shopping mall selling cigars. And a buddy of mine and I, we'd gone to camp together, gone to same high school, same college. We were sitting there working, in the cigar store one night, and I got a call from NRA. And a gentleman I knew from Scout camp that was also an NRA division director offered me a job in the museum on weekends.
Wow.
And I thought, on the weekend, that would be horrible.
Right, because you're young, you got a social life.
Well, yeah, it was like, that's when I got to go shoot Yankees for fun on the weekend, was reenacting. I was big into reenacting.
Yeah.
And I thought, and my buddy looked at me, he said, we got to grow up one day and get real jobs. And you never know where this might lead. Might be a foot in the door to something bigger. So I was like, okay. So I did not go to camp that weekend. I did not take a speaking role in the movie Gettysburg, which I auditioned for. Really? Yeah. It's Walter Taylor. Would have been Martin Sheen's adjutant. So things like that.
Wow.
I said, all right, I'll go work 6 hours a day, 2 days a week, weekends only, every weekend of the month. And within 6 weeks, I was full time. Really? And within 6 months, I had moved, to a position where I could turn to my buddy in the cigar shop and say, hey, would you like to work my old job, on the weekends? Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, but that's when I go, I know, but we got to get real jobs and you don't know where to lead.
We got to grow up, yeah.
So, that was 34 years ago.
Wow.
And I'm now the director of the museum. And Mark Keefe, my buddy in the cigar shop, is now the editorial director of all of NRA publications.
Oh, yes. Now let's take a right. Okay. Yeah, I know I recognize that name. He's a blonde-haired guy, right?
Yeah. So, both Eagle Scouts, both worked at Goshen Scout camps, and, just got really, really fortunate and very, very, extremely blessed to be able to do what we've been doing for so long.
That's pretty amazing. So when you as you work your way up, what's your official title?
Director.
The director. Okay. What's the difference between the director and the curator?
Well, nothing right now. I'm the director, the curator, the senior curator, the associate curator, and the assistant curator, and the firearms specialist. There were 9 employees.
And you're all of them.
Yeah, I have 2 of us now.
Wow.
Well, I actually got 2 part-timers back, so I count them towards the 9, so I got to count them towards the 4 that we have total.
Gotcha.
But for 2.5 years, it was just me by myself.
When was that?
During COVID.
During COVID,
yeah.
Gotcha.
From April of 19 to May of 2022. So it was 2 years and 2 months.
That's pretty cool. That seems like a great gig. I mean, that's an amazing opportunity.
It is. I'm really blessed. I think the biggest misconception is, you get to play with guns all day. You get to nobody plays with guns. Misnomer.
Of course.
You get to handle guns all day. You get to you're always going someplace cool.
Right.
Setting up there's an awful lot of work into that. And I can go weeks in that building without physically handling a firearm.
Yeah.
And when you do, it's usually to clean it or something.
Right. Yeah. I spent a lot of time playing in a band, and it wasn't the glamorous life that I thought it would be.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Groupies.
That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But no, it's loading equipment in, sitting around, waiting for the party to start so you can start playing, and then when you're done, you got to load everything out and clean everything up. And
oh yeah, it's a huge job. I mean, just going anywhere anymore. And I know it sounds horribly pretentious that, poor pitiful me, I had to go to Cody last month. But, when you've been out there 8 times or so, and it's work, but it's enjoyable. It's all enjoyable. I'm very fortunate, very blessed. But I really don't want to get on another plane again. I've been there, I've done that, and I just don't look forward to it anymore.
Right.
But like you say, I'm very blessed to be able to do that at all, and I find myself very fortunate.
So you said you're out at Cody. Did you do you set up exhibits at other museums?
In that case, we had a meeting of the American Society of Arms Collectors, and so I was out there to attend that meeting, go to the seminars, participate in the exhibits. Cody had been renovated. There was a new, almost complete ceiling to floor, remake of the museum that I got to see when it opened in 19, and just the weekend it opened, literally. And this was my first time back since then. So the curators and I out there, we like to work hand in glove, mutual support. There's no real competition. We don't charge admission. We're not looking for Facebook likes, things like that. I don't look at any of this as competition. I look at it as just being, having more friends in the effort of spreading knowledge about firearms, their history, their heritage. There's so many untold stories about how important firearms and their use have been in just America in particular.
Yeah. It's before we did the show, I got here a little earlier, and I just got a sampling of the NRA Museum, just a sampling, and there's a ton of stuff, and you walk around and you see all of these guns, and you're like, man, the anti-gun folks want to destroy our history.
Oh yeah,
they really do with all of these things, and you see all of these guns that are hundreds of years old. Holy moly! I look at some of these. I'm like, how did they shoot these and not hurt themselves?
Right, and it's one of the things that gets me is, okay, you look at something and say, okay, well, is that fact or fiction? Is it truth or whatever? And you're hoping it's truth, especially if it's something printed or in a textbook.
Yeah.
Hoping it was vetted. It was, they went through an editorial process that when you're teaching kids, the school board, stuff like that, have looked at it. But when I was a kid growing up, right here in the Washington area, they said, okay, in social studies class next week, we're going to study the American Revolution. I was excited.
Yeah.
I wanted to know about Light Horse Harry Lee, the Battle of Monmouth, Brandywine, how Henry Knox got the cannons over the mountains from Ticonderoga. I got goosebumps. I was so excited. I couldn't wait to go to school.
Yeah. And
we spent a week talking about the Tax Act, the Stamp Act, the Intolerable Act, the Boston Tea Party, the Boston Massacre, and then the shot heard around the world, and then Yorktown. And I'm like, boy, hang on. What about the cool stuff?
Yeah.
I don't care about Parliament. I want to know about, about Ferguson and those guys at Kings Mountain. Tell me about that. No, they want to let you know how it all happened. Well, what really, really chafed me was when I got old enough to go read about this on my own. I realized, okay, they told me about the Tax Act, the Stamp Act, the Intolerable Act, all that, but they didn't tell me it was sin of omission. They didn't tell you when why was Paul Revere riding around that morning? What was the point? The British are coming. Well, that's kind of weird. We were the British.
Right.
But why was he telling people that the British were coming to begin with? What was the point? Well, they were marching. Well, they always march. You got regiments, plural, of British soldiers in Cambridge and in Boston, there to protect the colonists. You can't just have them sit around all day. They go on route marches.
Right.
And we see it on the highways here. In the summer, the Humvees and the Deuce and a Halves going for the National Guard and the Army Reserve on their annual training. Mm-hmm. They move around. They do these route marches. They had always been doing these route marches. But Revere knew through his network of spies and the Sons of Liberty that they were coming to take their guns specifically that day. And that was the first time that General Gage had given orders to Pitcairn to take the guns, the ammunition, the stands of arms and artillery. And that's why when he showed up on Lexington Green on the 19th of April, and Captain Parker says, if they mean to have a war, don't fire unless fired upon. Mm-hmm. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here. And so the shots for liberty ring out. And they were after the guns. Did they tell you that in school? No.
Yeah, no.
They made it sound like the Boston Tea Party, the Boston Massacre, and the Stamp Act took place on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They were really pissed on Thursday and started shooting on Friday. But that didn't happen. Right. That Boston Massacre picture that we're all so familiar with was actually printed, engraved, and sold by Paul Revere. And printed, engraved, and sold. Very important, those three words. Sold. The money went to the Sons of Liberty. Paul Revere drew that Boston Massacre drawing years before Lexington and Concord. That's when it happened. It wasn't that month. It wasn't that year. It wasn't two. It was years before.
Wow.
So, and they were raising money for the Sons of Liberty. Mm-hmm. And that's how we get to be free. There's a lot of memes last week running around that says, if you're anti-gun, you don't get to celebrate tomorrow. Because tomorrow was brought to you by guys with guns.
That's right.
I
put up the classic picture that we've seen. I said, Independence Day was brought to you by men with guns and a backbone.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, it was stories like that they don't tell you, that they leave out. If I tell you Eli Whitney, first thing coming to your mind.
That's a cotton gin.
Cotton gin. You know what? Cotton gin be damned. Cotton gin literally had that much effect on it. Whitney went bankrupt defending his patent on the cotton gin.
Really?
Yeah, he went bankrupt.
Wow.
Because he couldn't keep people from stealing it, right? And the cotton gin, they want to make you think that this thing happened right before the Civil War. It's 1790s that the cotton gin came out. All right.
Yeah.
But what did Whitney really contribute to America? What do we really get out of Whitney that changes the world? Okay, interchangeable parts. It was Eli Whitney Jr., Simeon North, John Hall right here in Virginia. These guys, they're the ones that come up with the idea of interchangeability in manufacturing of parts. The American method of manufacturing. We industrialize. Eli Whitney Jr. is making revolvers for Samuel Colt in 1847, the famous Walker revolver. Mm-hmm. And that puts Colt on the map. Colt's a household word after that, because Whitney's able to make 1,000 of them in 6 months, and they all work. They all interchange. In 1940, a year before Pearl Harbor, Roosevelt gives his most famous fireside chat. Mm-hmm. And he says, never since Jamestown, have we been in a situation. We must have more planes, more ships, more fighters. He says, a Democrat in the White House says, we need more guns. We need to become the arsenal of democracy. And that happens because we make 5 billion Garands in 48 months. Wow. We make 250,000, 2 million, M1 carbines in the same amount of time. We make, M1A1. There isn't a soldier on the Allied side, not on the winning side, September 2nd, 1945, in Tokyo, Bay, when the Japanese surrender, there's a soldier learning about that surrender that morning on the winning side that doesn't have something in his arms, something on his back, something in his belly, something he's standing on that didn't say made in the USA. We supplied the world and ourselves. We put 12 million men and women in uniform in World War II.
Wow.
12 million. Each one of them gets a a 4-pocket dress uniform tunic. And it's got 11 buttons on it, times 12 million. How many shifts do you think they're making at the Waterbury Button Company?
No kidding.
So it's stuff like that changes the world. It was because of firearms. They don't teach you. They teach you cotton gin.
Right.
They don't teach you mass production. That's the key.
That's pretty wild. That is pretty wild.
We won World War II because Sam Colt sends, or Sam Walker, a little kid from Bowie, Maryland over here, sends Sam Colt a letter saying, I need 1,000 revolvers. And make it bigger, make it larger diameter, trigger guard, blade front sight, things like that. Can you make these for me really quick? Because I really like your 5-shot Pattersons that you gave me in Florida. And Colt's been out of business for 40 years. He hasn't made a gun. He owes everybody in New England money. He's bankrupt.
Yeah.
He's trying to, sell nitrous oxide at fairs and stuff like that.
Wow.
And in this 5'5", 110-pound freckled Irish kid from Bowie, Maryland says, I need 1,000 guns. He says, yes, I'll get them to you. Hang on. And does goes running right over to Eli Whitney Jr. and says, how do we,
right.
This is the only way. The only way to meet that order is to do it this way.
Wow.
You turn here.
All right.
So, that changes the world.
It does.
Because, like you said, Colt's bankrupt. He's out of business. You would never know the name Colt if it wasn't for Whitney and Colt getting together on that contract and lying to a kid, saying that, I'll make you 1,000 guns. I got a factory. You didn't have anything of the nature.
That is pretty wild. I had someone that I knew and met, not necessarily became friends with, but someone I knew was making concealed carry holsters, concealed carry purses. And at the beginning of the pandemic, they said he changed everything over and started making masks. And I'm like, that's pretty wild. Like, changed like that. And then, of course, he makes a boatload of money. And
good for you if you can.
Yeah. And I think we got someone behind us. Ended up making a boatload of money that way. My God bless him. God bless him, man. God bless him. 33 years working at the NRA Museum, traveling around, helping with some other museums.
Yeah.
This is a pretty cool gig. What are some of the favorite guns that are in the NRA Museum that you like?
Well, probably the coolest thing that we've ever gotten to do is handle the Peterson collection.
Oh my gosh. The gentleman stopped us and told us about that. He said when they acquired it, it was like $33
million.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was only 400 guns.
Right.
The total collection was 2,000.
Oh my God.
And he had whittled that down by selling off 5,000 guns before he died. So that 2,000 was what was left.
That is insane. And then he was also a car collector. He's got the Peterson Museum
Peterson Automotive Museum
out in California.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
And he was a nice guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get to meet many billionaires, but knowing him and the one or two others I've had the pleasure, it was a very nice guy. Really nice guy.
That's great.
And he had great taste too. I mean, his gun collection. We were, Mrs. Peterson said you can give me a request for whatever you want from the collection. About whatever I give you, you have to promise to always display it. And so that's why we got the 400 that we have.
Unbelievable.
But there's some great guns. The 3 Invincible Parker shotguns They only made 3 in the invincible grade. We have all 3.
Wow.
Folks say, well, how can you, how can you put a
price tag
put a
on it?
price tag? You say they're worth $5 million. And granted, on most of these where we say there's an extraordinary amount of money attached to it, it's based on comparable stuff like that.
Yeah.
In this case, we were offered $5 million for them twice, so I know that it's worth $5 million.
Right.
That's how much I turned down for them.
That's funny. One of the guns I thought was pretty cool that was in there was the oh my gosh, I'm going to butcher it. It was a gun that was given to JFK, a single action revolver.
Right. So a Colt had a habit of giving presidents a presentation grade gun of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, that's varied. We're actually, we have one for Donald Trump that Colt made. We've been invited by Colt to make the presentation at some point. But generally speaking, they used to always give President a nice cased gun. And in the case of JFK, this one was a New Frontier.
Mm-hmm.
And that name came from his campaign speech, his slogan about a new frontier. And how often has speech, been part of the development of a firearm? They were so taken by the hope and vision of the future that Kennedy had with his New Frontier speech that they actually created a target, grade single action and called it the New Frontier, and they made one up for him with the seal of the president on it, silhouette of the White House, PT 109, his signature, and things of that nature. But unfortunately,
there was the year. What I thought was interesting is the year they made it was the year he died.
Yeah, it never got presented because of Dallas.
Right.
And there was more than one of them made. I think the folks at the custom shop were trying to, do who could outdo one another. So there's one at the Gene Autry Museum of Western Heritage out in LA too.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both real. They're both genuine articles.
Yeah. All right. So I asked. I got to interview Ashley Lubinsky in Dallas a couple years ago.
Right.
And we were about 15 minutes away from Dealey Plaza.
Yeah.
So I said, we had 15 minutes to talk about you, and then we're talking about the Kennedy assassination. And I thought it was really funny. She's like, well, I'm a historian. I really don't know much about the conspiracies. I'm like, I know plenty for both of us.
There you go.
She said that she heard the Carcano rifle Lee Harvey Oswald used was in the National Archives.
Yes.
And she said it might have gotten lost.
I don't know about loss. I just know that the Kennedys have a great deal of influence over things. And when that was the rumor, is that it was to never see the light of day again.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, you can't get a researcher's card to go look at it, anything like that. I don't believe it's been photographed since it was entered into evidence. I believe Mrs. Kennedy's chenille dress and hat, her pillbox hat, are also in the archives, but I'm not positive. So we do know from the existing photographs taken at the Dallas Police Department and the archives intake photographs of the gun. We know the serial number and the year it was made, the factory it was made, because those Carcanos were made at 3 different factories.
Yeah.
And so there's a neat guy named Dr. Edwin Latimer in New Jersey, in Morristown, New Jersey, who's passed, but he wrote the book on the Kennedy-Lincoln coincidences.
Yeah. Okay.
Kennedy was in Lincoln. Lincoln was in
Kennedy,
Ford,
right? Ford's Theater, and
stuff like
Kennedy
that.
was killed in Ford.
So he wrote the book on that. There's a lot of it. He was a ballistics expert. He was a urologist, but in his spare time, he became a ballistics expert. And he went and got from the same, I believe it was High Hunter, I might be wrong, the same ad in a Rifleman that Oswald got his Carcano at. He bought 3 more, and same configuration, same sling, same Hollywood Optics scope, same, X mount, mount for the scope, identical to the Oswald gun. I mean, indistinguishable except for the serial number.
Right.
In fact, they're made at the same factory, the same year. They're dated yearly. They had the same year date, same factory, just different serial number. He did a series of ballistic tests with those, and he testified before the House Select Committee on Assassinations in 1978. And so these guns were entered as evidence into the Warren Commission 2 report. And so that's as close as anyone's been able to see what the original, weapon looked like.
So was he able to pull off 3 shots in 6 seconds?
Yeah, if he didn't use that scope is worthless.
Yeah.
But it's a high mount, so he could use the open sights. But the answer to that question is as long as he wasn't looking through that scope.
Really, I'm nothing of a history buff like you, but I love the Kennedy assassination. And anytime I watch a show on the Kennedy assassination on television, I'll watch it every time. It doesn't matter which one it is.
Right.
Whatever it is, whatever agenda that they're pushing with that particular show, I sit there, I watch it, I eat it up, and I believe every single one of them. I'll watch one, like, on one Saturday afternoon, I'll be like, that is totally what happened. There was a guy shooting from the drain pipe, shooting up. And then the next time I'll watch one, and they're like, there was a guy with an AR that was in the front car, and when that car accelerated, he fell forward, and, finger ended up on the trigger, and that was the one that fired the fatal shot. I'm like, I totally believe that one. I believe whatever it is that they're pushing.
Sure.
Really what it comes down to.
Well, I went down to Dealey Plaza before the museum was there, when it was still a school book depository, and then became a county storage building. And I wanted to go in. I wanted to go to the 6th floor. I wanted to see the spot. And oh no, you can't go in. Can't go in. This is not a tourist destination. And I was like, how did Oswald get up there? How did he get up there? He went up the service elevator out of the back alley.
Really?
Yeah, it still works. So yeah, that's how I got up there.
Oh my!
And I'm wandering around by myself, kicking around in the corner, looking out the window, and going, "Oh, this is kind of cool."
This is really cool.
And I literally snuck up to the 6th floor the same way he did. I didn't bump into Roger Mudd on the way out like Oswald did, but
right.
That was. Now there's a museum up there.
Yeah.
And interesting concept, that museum. When it opened, they were going nuts as to how Nouveau, this, that, and the other thing, because it didn't have any artifacts in it. It was all just images. And I thought, yeah, that's not going to last. And sure enough, there are artifacts in there now.
Yeah.
But this whole idea of, we can have an artifactless museum. I don't know what special kind of hallucinogen you need to be on to think that that's a good idea.
That's crazy. Yeah. That is really cool. So, did I ask you what your favorite gun at the museum is?
Well, I guess it kind of depends. Right now, it's not even ours. It's on loan, and that's Theodore Roosevelt's, machine gun from San Juan Hill. We got a lot of Theodore Roosevelt stuff, and I'm a big Theodore Roosevelt geek.
Is that one out? I think I saw.
Yeah, it's in its own case.
Yeah.
And we literally found it in the basement of the Theodore Roosevelt Birthplace Museum in Manhattan, and then asked the Park Service if we could borrow it, seeing as how we found it. It was lost in plain sight.
Right, trying to claim some rights to it.
Yeah, and they've been very generous to us and have loaned it to us for a number of years. And Roosevelt took, he said Tiffany and others gave us 2 Browning automatic rifles, and those were the potato diggers. And Dolph Goldsmith, rest his soul, he just passed. He said in his book on Brownings, he said the serial numbers are such and such, such. And they've been lost for 114 years. And I go up in 2012 to look at
You take a left here?
straight.
Okay.
And, look at a museum exhibit on, the Bull Moose Progressive, Centennial Campaign. And I see this thing in the, literally in the corner, tied to a radiator, steam radiator with bicycle chain. And I'm like, is that what and they said, no, that's our Gatling gun. And I go, no, that's not a Gatling gun. It's a potato digger. Where'd it come from?
All right,
what's the serial number?
What's a potato digger?
So potato diggers in 1895, John Browning designed machine gun made by Colt. And it's the first machine gun that our U.S. Army ever uses in combat.
Wow.
And Browning designs it. And it's called a potato digger because just like on a Gram, when the bullet gets real close to the muzzle, there's a port right on the bottom of the barrel. And so as the bullet passes over that, the gases, escaping gases, some are deflected into that hole and it works the operate. It's just like the Garand. I mean, if Browning had been given enough time, he'd have designed the Garand 30 years earlier than Garand did. But it's exactly how it works. But if it sits too close to the ground, it goes like this as it flaps down, and it digs little holes in the ground. That's what they're called, potato digger holes.
Okay. So you found this one?
Found this one. Serial number matched up. It's one of the two that Roosevelt had. Nobody's seen it for 114 years.
Wow.
It's the first machine gun the U.S. Army ever uses in military combat.
Take a left.
Yeah, and we've got it.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought it was really cool.
That is cool. How do you do a lot of people want to become curators of museums? You've got an unbelievable wealth of knowledge about firearms and history, and you found a way to put these two things together. How do we keep that going so that we don't lose our history?
I'd like to know. I like that answer myself. When I started 34 years ago, one of the first talks I gave was in Ohio to the Ohio Gun Collectors Association. And I was the youngest guy in the room. That was 34 years ago. I was 28, 26, 7, something like that. And they asked me to give a talk at their annual meeting right before COVID. It was 2019. And to be the keynote address at their annual show. Now, I was still the youngest guy in the room.
Oh, jeez.
So that's not a good thing. Now, how do you afford to be a gun collector? Guns that I was buying, fairly inexpensive $300 Enfields and Webleys are now $1,200, $1,500, $1,800.
Right.
It's hard to get into reenacting, to do living history and stuff like that because the firearms are so, firearms part of it's very expensive.
Right.
But how do you get young people involved? They've got video games. They've got this, that, and the other thing. So many distractions. And I don't think anybody's found the answer to that yet.
Yeah.
But every day, you meet somebody that has a.
We're gonna
if we can,
it's a little too late.
Or we can go down there and do a whip around,
yeah,
or go straight and then never mind. We can go down here and do a whip around.
All right, we'll do a U-turn.
But yeah, I don't have an heir apparent. I like, everybody that works in the museum with me is 5 years older than me. At least 5 years older than me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting stuff, but it's a lot of information. It's all really interesting stuff for sure.
Well, I was horribly dyslexic as a kid. I couldn't catch a ball if it was dropped on me, right?
Right.
And I read. I forced myself to read because that was the escape hatch.
Mhm.
That was where you went into a book. I didn't have the distraction of 24/7 cable or a phone that talked to you or anything like that. I had books.
Yeah.
And that's all I did was read. And I still do. I love it. I collect them. You know, I asked my friends that helped me move through years. I have like 5,000 books in my personal library.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty heavy.
Yeah. Any doesn't matter. Just go up here and turn left or right.
I turn right, okay, because that's the only choice that's given.
Yeah. So yeah, I love the books. Love reading, about the stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know where the world's headed with this digital stuff. Everything being online, Kindles, things like that. Because as we're seeing right now, and it's become very evident just literally this month, or within the last month or two, that AI can manipulate anything you want it to.
Oh my gosh.
And you get it to say anything, and you get anybody to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And we just saw Indiana Jones in the Dial of Destiny the other night.
Yeah.
And he was de-aged by AI. And what they did was they had every frame of film he had ever been in, from Apocalypse Now to it's the early stuff, and they were able to recreate his face from 40 years ago. And get there will be a point in time where you're not going to be able to distinguish real or Memorex. And you're going to need books. You're going to need what was actually printed before
Right.
2020
Right.
to go back and say there's the truth is hidden here.
Exactly. There's watching the stuff that AI does, the videos and everything like that is you don't really I look at things now and I'm like, is that real or is it not real?
Yeah.
Like what's fake and what's not fake. And the AI stuff, I'm a little concerned about this because somebody's got to put that information in there. And if that person's got some sort of an agenda, there's going to be, I think there's going to be a bend or a tilt and an angle that they're going to take on the information that gets printed, through AI.
There's no question. And it all has an agenda. They all have an agenda, this next middleman, I guess.
Okay.
And it's all about the Benjamins. It's all about money.
Yeah.
It's all, and see, I would go far right lanes here.
Okay.
And the money drives their agenda. Their agenda, raises their money. And it's insidious.
It is. All right, listen, we are almost back to the NRA Museum. Get in the left lane,
Yeah.
How do people find you and all the stuff that you're up to?
Well, I tell people, as you just saw, we're right there at exit 57 off of Interstate 66, about 20 miles or so outside of Washington, D.C. So you can find us just off the Washington Beltway. We're open 7 days a week, from 9 to 4. And if you can't find us off the Beltway, find us on the internet. We're there 24/7 at nramuseums.org.
All right, very cool. I'm going to put some links in there. It's the NRA Museum right here.
That's us.
I'll put some links in there. The map is on the back, which is cool. Phil, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
This was a pleasure to be able to get these stories from someone like you.
My
This is
pleasure.
really cool.
And we're free and free parking. So there's plenty of parking and no admission.
I am tactically frugal, so that's what I love. All right, listen, if you are not a member of the Second Amendment Foundation, you can join them at saf.org. You can find all of your favorite pro-freedom podcasts at sdrn.us. That's the Self-Defense Radio Network. And again, I want to thank Phil Schreier from the NRA Museum. Thank you so much, man.
My pleasure. Thank you.
This was great.